Hello and welcome to my video tutorial about the beauty of grids and grid design in HTML. Now, HTML5. Now, as I'm inexperienced, I'll do my best, but this is my first time teaching, so let's learn together, shall we? We're going to start with a pretty simple HTML starter here. So as you can see, we have just everything you'd need to be able to start a website here. If you don't understand it, that's fine, but you're in the wrong place. Let's start with what we came here to learn: grid layout. So, what we're going to start with is we're actually going to create the initial, let's say information blocks that is going to be contained within our grid. So, we're going to do that using the beauty of div. Now, I hear you guys. Some of you guys might be asking, Vlad, what is a div? And I'm out here to tell you it's kind of like a file. Now, that might sound complicated, but what you can do with divs is something like this. Now that I have two divs, what I can do is say that this div, these two divs, are a file, and within this file are these two divs. Good way of seeing that. You know what? I'm just gonna do this right here. I'm gonna go to file location, like this up here. So this assignments 3 here would be this div, and then this div on the inside would basically be images here. So it's inside of a folder. We got that. That's important to note because that helps structure a grid in your head. So what we're going to do here with the grid containers now is, now that we have this div out here, we're going to give it a class. Makes it easier to manipulate this entire grid here we're making. So we're going to add a class, and the class is going to be called grid C, because this is going to be the grid container. So I'm going to just make it faster, make it grid C. Now we're going to go in here. Now what that is it just says 1. Kind of silly, right? Nothing that interesting in there. Here's where it gets interesting. There's going to be 4 individual grids in here. Oh, that's a silly in me. I'm kind of wacky. So now that you can see, we have our 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now what we're going to do is make these look a little nicer, and we're actually going to make this work. So what we're going to do now is move to CSS, and we're going to start stylizing our class. And our class, if you remember, is called, always remember to add the period, grid C. So we've created grid C. Now we're going to tell the program to actually understand this as a grid. How do you do that? Well, you tell it what to display as. Display grid. Look at that. Crazy. So now that we have this, the program now knows that this folder right here, this large folder, has the incentive to be a grid. So now we're going to go back here and we're going to modify our items a little bit. How are we going to do that? We're going to give them their own classes. We're going to call it grid I. How's that for grid item? Give that a little highlight. Boom. Boom. Say it with me. Boom. So we're in. Now that we have all this information, there's also a little something we might want to add in here. Grid. Oh. I. Sorry, my fingers like to run around the keyboard a bit. Any programmer knows what I mean when I say that, I hope. So now that we have our grid items, let's do a little something to the grid items. Let's give them a little bit of color. How about that? Let's do it. Background color is going to be, let's make it a nice, let's make it a nice aquamarine. I like that. Let's do a little aquamarine today, guys. We're gonna give each grid item, we're gonna give it a little border. Border. Let's do 1 pixel. You know what? Let's do RGBA, because I'm going to write it out by hand because this makes more sense. We'll make it so red will be 0. We don't need any red. Let's get some. There we go. Let's get some 3 green in there. Let's maybe get some. Let's get some 40 blue in there. and we're gonna give it an opacity or opacity, whatever, or opensy. I don't know how you say it. That's not what we're here to learn in my class. We're gonna give it a little bit of color definition there. There we go. For the border, it's gonna have a little bit of interestingness there to it. Let's go back to display container though, because we got to add one more thing that I forgot to do. That was my fault, group. I'm sorry. But now that we have it displaying as a grid, we're going to give it its actual, how do you say? We're going to give how many columns it's going to have now, this grid. So let's do it together. So what we're going to do is grid template. Grid template columns. There it is. See, it's kind of simple. It's kind of simple. So we have 4 there. We're going to add some more grid there for in a second, but let's do it. I know what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to go auto. But look, you think that's enough? It's not. Auto. Auto. Let's explain what this does. So now that we've referenced auto 3 times, that means that the program is going to read this and it's going to say, I'm going to automatically create space for 1, 2, 3 columns, right? Makes sense. But we have 4 items here. That sounds kind of weird. You know what? I agree. You're right. That does sound kind of weird, which is why we're going to make it 6, just so then this is a little bit easier to understand. 4, 5, 6. Perfect. Ready? 5, 6. Done. So now that we have this, we're going to give it a background color here. That's different than the original background color, just so we can make some differences and we can learn a bit about each other by looking at the columns when we're done. You know, some cyan. Who doesn't love cyan? Come on. Love cyan. And perfect. So now we have this. I'm actually also going to add some font size into the grid just so then it comes out better. Font size is going to be 30 pixels because, oh, that's a 20. And now it's 40 because I've decided. Perfect. So now that we have this information, we're going to give it a good look of what it looks like. Oh, 1 second. Sorry. I may or may not have fully ended a video earlier because I made that mistake and didn't know how to fix it. Would you look at this team? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3 columns, because remember, all we're dealing with here is this right here. We're dealing with these numbers that we have now used this information to edit to make it look like this. We're using grids. We can do a lot of stuff here. We can do, we can add padding. We can change the background color one more time. In fact, I think I might make this just a straight up 1. See what happens if we change that. How does that look? Okay, don't worry about it. That doesn't matter. So what we're dealing with here now, as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then, as you can see here, auto, auto, auto. Switch to the next line, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. Would you look at that? Kind of simple. See, it's kind of simple when you really give yourself that attempt and you really try to work at it. But you can do more things to this. We can add some stuff. And what we're going to add today is a little bit of something I like to call grid column gaps. You might be asking, Vlad, what? How am I supposed to know what a grid column gap is? I didn't take your course at George Brown and have your amazing teachers. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know what to tell you. We're going to use grid columns, grid template columns. Grid, template, columns. What does that mean? Oh, shoot. We're already using grid template columns. What I meant to say is grid column gap. My bad. I got distracted. Grid column gap. Gap. There it is. So with grid column gap, what we can do is we can actually set some space between those columns. Make it look a little bit better, maybe if we can. So we're going to add 50 pixels. Boom. Grid column gap is equal to 50 pixels. Go squad. That's all we know. Now, go back here. We got border. Oh, we got to make it solid. I think that's what I forgot. Solid. There it is. Make this back to 0.8. Perfect. So we have this, right? Looks kind of nice. We're gonna add a little bit of padding too, just because this tends to make things look better. Padding. you know what? I'm going to go crazy and give it 15 pixels. Don't try to understand my methods. Even though you should, because this is class. What did we just do there? We gave it a nice little separation between the columns, didn't we? Looks kind of nice if you were to ask me, myself. So, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Auto, auto, auto. 1, 2, 3. Switch. Next line. 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. See? We're doing some augmentation to the grid. Now, you might ask, Vlad, I'm going to ask you one more question, and you know what? This might be a doozy. And I would tell you, student, you're wrong. I know everything. And the answer to your question that you haven't even asked is, what can I do about the rows? Is there anything a student can do about rows? Yes, there is. You might already guess what it's called. Do you see it there? Do you see it there? Grid row gap. You've learned. So what we're going to do with grid row gap is we're going to give it 50 pixels. You know, and what's that going to do? What is that? What is that line we've just added through the halfway by about the size of 50 pixels? Well, my friend, that is a grid row gap. Grids are an excellent way of sorting out a website, and they're an excellent way of making sure that everything seems uniform. Lots of uses, lots of very, very good uses. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you've learned a lot. And always remember, live the dream.